Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be showing from the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Team Championship. It is Nodirbek Abdusattorov versus Arjun Erigaisi, both playing board 1, Nodirbek representing Team Uzbekistan and Arjun Erigaisi representing Team MGD1. That's MetaMind Gaming Division, and 1 is because they are Division 1. Comprised mostly of Indian players, but there are also players like David Anton, and sometimes they have other players as well. But they are very well known and obviously very, very strong. Now, it's a really crazy game with lots of ups and downs. You guys will enjoy it. Rapid time format. As usual, it's 3 days of Rapid and then 2 days of Blitz. There's I think a €500,000 prize fund, so it's a nice little tournament. Let's check it out, and of course I will be checking out your hashtag suggestions for any game that you would like to see after this one. Nodirbek with white opens with knight to f3, and sorry, forgot to mention, like in classical, we don't need to introduce them. You guys know that there are incredible players both in the world top 10, Arjun even in the world top 5. In Rapid, Nodirbek is a little bit higher rated. He is, I think, maybe even in the world top 5. He's definitely in the world top 10, and Arjun is somewhere in the world top 20. So both, I mean, in every time format, you guys know that they are, as best as it gets. So knight f3, Nodirbek opens with Areti. We have pawn to d5 by Arjun and pawn to c4. Okay. Pretty standard setup, nothing out of the ordinary here. We have pawn to e6 going for the Agincourt defense, as now it's basically as if c4 was played and then maybe e6, knight f3, d5, so you could also look at it as an Agincourt defense against the English. Pawn to g3, knight f6, now transposing into some Catalan. Bishop to g2, and here pawn to d4, which is actually very, very rare. Usually bishop to e7 is played, or d captures on c4 or c5, or some other moves, but d4 is maybe the 6th most popular continuation, but it has been played by some very, very strong players. We have castles kingside, pawn to c5 defending the d4 pawn, and pawn to d3. We have knight to c6 by Arjun, and pawn to e3. Going after the d4 pawn, we have bishop to e7, and now we have a trade. E captures on d4. C captures on d4 and rook to e1. And there are a couple of games that reach this position, even some top level ones. For example, knight to d7 is a known move, castles is a known move. Pragnananda played castles here against Dingliren and lost the game. So the position has been reached in top level chess, that is what I'm saying. But here we have h6 by Arjun, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. And much like in every other Catalan, knight to e5. You want to open up the light square bishop, as the Catalan light square bishop is the most powerful bishop there can be. Maybe, a close second to the Sicilian dragon, but maybe even stronger. Depends on what you like. We have knight captures on e5, rook captures on e5, and castles kingside. b3, not going for bishop b2, that would be a little bit slow, but bishop to e3 to trade off the dark square bishop on e7 or on d6. As bishop to d6 is played, we have rook back to e1 and pawn to e5, now really making bishop b2 without any point. Also, you can go here, can go here, can go here. So your next move is pretty much self-explanatory. Bishop to a3. Otherwise, you're going to have a bishop that does nothing. And okay, Black's dark square bishop isn't spectacular, but it's doing more than White's. So rook to e8 and bishop captures on d6. We have queen captures and knight to d2. And already you can see that, okay, Nodirbek has a backwards d3 pawn, and the fight will be over the e4 square. We have bishop to g4, nicely developing with tempo, attacking the queen, queen to c2, and queen to d7, not just defending the b7 pawn, but also preparing bishop to h3 to get rid of the strong Catalan bishop. We have pawn to c5. Nodirbek says, all right, you do what you want. On the king side, I'm ready to go a4, b4, b5, c6 at some point, and create a pass pawn on the queen side. Okay, rook a to c8, Arjun is ready. We have pawn to b4 and bishop to h3, just trying to trade over the light square bishop, and bishop to h1, which is a very, very human move. Bishop captures on h3, we could show it. The engine really likes it. Not really, it's maybe likes it a little bit more, as after knight to c4, you can win the e5 pawn. But the problem is, the problem is black cannot go knight g4 just yet to put pressure on h2, because it's just going to play f3, and the queen covers everything here along the second rank, and also the knight on c4 covers that e3 square, so you don't have knight to e3. The problem is black can say you can have the pawn and just go rook e6 and double up on the e file. And now you really have nothing better than knight captures on e5. Rook captures on e5 isn't all that great, because now knight to g4 comes with tempo. The rook is attacked, and also queen captures on h2 is being threatened. So you will have to capture with the knight, and then the other rook doubles up on the e file, and the black has, well, I would say enough compensation. After f4, the knight is very nicely placed there, but if it ever moves, you lose control over g4. The e-file is controlled by black. The white king is somewhat open, so maybe not the position you want to have. So that's why bishop to h1 by Nodirbek and knight to g4. Okay, now it's not a problem. Just knight to e4, as everything here is defended. You could also just continue your pawn storm on the queen side, but the e4 square has been, is up for grabs, so why not play it? And here we have pawn to b6, just threatening to capture on c5, and knight to d6. I know none of you are considering this, would be a terrible move, because if this, then just this, as the queen on c2 is undefended. So that's why after b6, rook a to c1. Now the queen is defended, and knight to d6 is a threat. So b captures, and rook to c7. So the knight d6 does not come with a fork. Knight to d6 and the rook to f8 adds additional protection to f7, but also you have a nice rook here to support your advancement with maybe f5, f4, or maybe f5, e4, and so on. We have queen to c4. Preparing queen to d5 to fully centralize before you execute pawn to c6. You also need to have the knight to defend it. So the queen has to defend the knight, so you can play pawn to c6. King to h8, also unpinning from this diagonal. We have queen to d5, and now pawn to f5. Pawn to c6, Nodirbek gets the pawn all the way up to c6, and now queen to e7. And the question is what to play here. It's a really fun position. Of course, they have 8 minutes on the clock. They're playing a rapid game. It's very intense. The outcome of the game could decide the outcome of the match and the world championship. But you guys, you have all the time in the world. If you want to pause, what would you play here as white? So the move is pawn to f4. And the point is that black really doesn't have all that much to do. You're just going to double up here, rook e2, rook to e1, improve the position as much as possible before finally capturing on e5. And there's not much black can do about this. The problem, and probably why Nodirbek did not play it, is a move like pawn to g5. And then let's say f captures pawn to f4. Looks, very, very tricky, but... point being, after, let's say, bishop f3, knight to e3, you can capture on d4. Not all that much for white to worry about here. But, of course, it's always easy to say that when analyzing the game afterwards. Here, bishop to f3 was played, which helps Arjun a lot, as Nodirbek no longer has the option of playing pawn to f4. We have queen to f6, getting off of that e-file. Knight to b5 attacks the rook, rook goes back, and now pawn to c7, and that pawn is very, very close to promotion. And probably safest for black is to go f4, then capture, and then you simply have already the queen and rook battery on the f-file. The knight is in g4, so not a bad way. But pawn to e4 was played by Arjun, which feels a little bit more natural. But now knight to d6 attacks the rook, and here we have knight to e5, threatening to capture the bishop on f3. And now I think we reach the most interesting moment in the game. What would you play here? It's borderline hilarious what needs to be played. So Nodirbek played the bishop back to h1. And he even invested a lot of time in this. He started with 5 minutes and 48, 3 minutes 42, so he invested 2 minutes in this. But the key move to play is bishop to h5. And the reason is to cover the d1 square. Believe it or not, Otherwise, you would be able to play e captures on d3. Here it is not possible because you can just capture with the queen on e5, and there are no worries here. If pawn to d2 attacking the two rooks, you will simply play captures on f6. And even if d captures on e1 queen, for example, d captures, you will capture the queen with the pawn or the rook. Knight captures on c8, you will play rook captures on c8, and there are no problems here. You'll play rook e7, the pawn is defended, and that's pretty much it. So bishop to h5 is a key defender of the d1 square. And on the other hand, if knight captures on d3 is played here, as it's a similar line to what actually happened in the game, here you can go knight captures on c8, and now after knight captures on c1, knight back to d6, now threatening promotion. You're just going to play knight back to d3, and now anything really. Rook to b1, you can go rook to b8, you can play c8, everything here is winning for white. So that's why it was incredibly important to have the bishop on h5 to guard the d1 square. But Nodirbek played bishop to h1, and now Arjun had a chance to play e captures on d3. Point being that now it doesn't matter that you can capture on e5. Even rook captures on e5. You don't care. Pawn to d2. And there's no bishop here to guard the d1 square. For example, rook to d1, you're just going to capture on c7. And now after, let's say, queen captures on d4, you're going to play rook to c1. Very, very, very simple stuff. It's still a draw, but you know, it's best Arjun can get. And after something like, let's say, bishop f3, you defend the rook here. Let's say bishop to g4 attacks the bishop, knight f7 check, something like this. Queen captures on d2, rook captures on d1, bishop captures, and now if you want to trade, you can trade. But if you want to keep the tension, you play bishop to h3, and this is looking very nice for black. But knight captures on d3 was played, and even though, yes, you are forking the rooks right away, it goes in Nodirbek's favor. We have knight captures on c8, knight captures on c1, we have rook captures on c1, and now rook captures on c8. Queen to d7 attacking the rook, and now queen to a6, just defending that rook. And queen captures on d4. Destroying black's strong center. Here, bishop to g2 would be a nice safety move, but I think, of course, you don't want to see that pawn coming to d3. So queen captures on d4 is a bit more natural, and it's very, very hard to exploit. You would have to play queen to d3 and then try and grab hold of the dark squares and somehow, you know, win that c7 pawn. But here, king to h7 was played. He gave him a little bit more time, and only now bishop to g2. We have bishop captures, king captures, and now queen to d3. Which seems like a great move, as if the queens get traded off, you already have a pass pawn on d3. But the key move here was e3, opening up this diagonal. And now you are threatening queen b7 check to pick up the c7 pawn. And if queen to c5 to defend the pawn, then you just go e2, and you already have a defended pass pawn on e2. So a lot of you know, misses on both sides. So queen to d3 was played, queen to e5 by Nodirbek, of course, avoiding the queen trade, keeping an eye on the c7 pawn, queen to d7, and now pawn to h4. We have king to g6, rook to c5, putting pressure on f5 as well, and king to f7. We have queen to f4, king back to g6, and now pawn to h5 with check. Now Arjun is already down to 26 seconds on the clock, so Nodirbek is playing a little bit faster to put the pressure on him. But yeah, king h7, and you are worse, but you're fighting. But no, Arjun said king captures on h5. He says, I'm gonna grab that pawn, even if it costs me the game, because, you know, now I'm up a pawn, and if I survive, you know, maybe I can do something. But rook captures on f5 check, king to g6, and now the only winning move, but I imagine it's not that difficult to spot, as you have to defend the c7 pawn. So rook to c5, and now there's really not all that much for black to do. Also, you stop any ideas the black queen might have. And yeah, that's it. Queen to e6 was played. We have rook to e5 attacking the queen, queen back to d7, and now queen captures on e4 with check. There was no way to defend that. King to f7 was played. Queen to c4 with check, king to f8, and now rook to e3, preparing rook to f3 check, and the black king will be forced out in the open. We have rook captures on c7. Nodirbek finally parts with the pawn, but he no longer needs it. We have rook to f3 check, king to e7, and you could go for rook to f7 check, but it requires, you know, additional calculating. With queen to f7 check, that's just it. King to d8, and here we have queen to g8 with check, and he was in this position on move 52 that Arjun Erigaisi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once the queen moves, or you move the king, doesn't really matter, then you can, you know, go king captures here, you can go rook f7, or if the queen blocks, you just go rook to f8, and I mean, you can win this any way you want. So yeah, Nodirbek takes down Arjun Erigaisi in the first game, and Arjun had a great start to the tournament. He missed one of the rounds, but in the 2 games that he played, he defeated Kazabek Nodirbek, and also he defeated Boris Gelfand, whereas Nodirbek already lost 1 game to David Navara going into this matchup. So a win against Arjun is definitely impressive, but Team Uzbekistan in the end lost to Team MGD1, as they won on 2 boards. Uzbekistan only won on board 1, and Team MGD1 is now the leader after day 1 going into round 5. They are very, very close to the second. I think second is Alireza's team or Hikaru's team, however you want to look at it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we'll see what happens. But interestingly, David Navara, who defeated Nodirbek, lost to young Faustino Oro. So, you know, haven't seen the game. If it's a nice game, we could also show that one. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, use that hashtag suggestion, as there are many games being played, and, you know, maybe there's a gem I've missed. Suggest it so everyone gets to see it. I would like to thank Richard Schwartz, Brian Willits, Obaken Grafella, Norman Duda, and Justine and Olaf Love Chess for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but now mostly covering the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Team Championship 2025. See you soon.